the best possible outcome is that we get something like the end of the Houthi campaign. We bombed them intensively for 2 months and then just gave up, but, declared victory and then, scurried away, right? That's what we did. And you could see that happening. We run out of interceptors. We're running out of missiles. Some planes have been shot down, but we say, oh man, we really, we have so severely damaged them. We have achieved our objectives. And sometimes you can hear the Israelis talking like that already. So you could have this declare victory and go home kind of ending. But the problem is, like in the case of Netanyahu, where does that leave him? He's been banking on this really all his life. And first of all, the Israelis are going to be mad because, a lot of their people have been killed there. The buildings have been destroyed. Sections of the city have just been leveled. And they say, what did you do? It's just Iran's still there. The government's still in power, and they're very angry. And they pulled out of the NPT. They're threatening to do that right now. And going to go for, you've said that the whole purpose of this was to deprive them of a nuclear weapon. Now they're going for a nuclear weapon, and you failed to, destroy their capacity to do that. And I think even with American involvement, it's doubtful that they can actually completely, destroy the Iran nuclear program and their ability to develop a weapon. My understanding is that. What is it? The Fodro facility. I know I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's just so deep underground that it was actually designed to survive a nuclear impact, and so that's going to stay, no matter what happens. And I think that we can expect that Iran after this is going to say we have to go nuclear. Look, we tried to do this through diplomacy and by, using our civilian program as leverage. That failed, obviously. There's only one alternative, and that is to go nuclear. We saw what happened in North Korea. And the whole world is going to be looking at that and saying, yeah, if you really want to be safe, protect yourself from the U.S. and Israel, you have to go nuclear. This is just, no matter what you look at it. This is, so I think,
I agree.
That's the best possible outcome. I'm not talking about, if the U.S. becomes involved and then there are attacks on American bases and Strait of Hormuz and all that, this is the best possible outcome.
Right. Everybody's going to have nukes after this, and that's the scary thing. We had North Korea go for it, and we saw that they didn't get bothered after they got the nuke. If Iran does it as well, then it's just going to be like, okay, the NPT has failed. And all this could have been resolved if we just didn't keep on threatening people.
You're right. And it's also, the IAEA has got to share. It shares a great part of the blame. I mean, their role in this is very ignoble. I mean, it's shameful. The Russians are furious at them. The Iranians are too. They have not yet condemned the Israeli attack on the Natanz nuclear facility. And there's another one I know that the Israelis have attacked. This is, again, a clear violation of international law, and it's what they're supposed to be in charge of, what they're supposed to prevent, and they just can't say anything about it. They just made some sort of bland comment about, we oppose attacks on nuclear facilities. But they just can't, just like in Russia, where clearly the Ukrainians again and again have targeted, nuclear power plants, both in, the former Ukraine and within, pre-2014 Russian territory. Grossi and the IAEA they won't say anything because they're in the pockets of the West. I mean, they have failed in their most fundamental duties here, and they have to share a big part of the blame.
Well, more than just failed. I mean, they were complicit in this attack on Iran, right? From my understanding is that the way that Israel was getting the names of nuclear scientists and the locations of this stuff was through the IAEA, which Iran was gracious enough to allow it in for these inspections, to try to do everything by the book, playing things by the rules. being, just a reasonable player in these negotiations, saying like, okay, yeah, we'll open ourselves up for inspection, do this, and then the IAEA was just a tool of Mossad
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah, right. Well, again, like, as we pointed out a couple of times, and then they had that finding, just a day before, I believe it was just a day before the surprise attack, that, okay, Israel, or Iran is in violation of their obligations to the IAEA. And just don't tell me that wasn't a coincidence. After 20 years of never, reaching that conclusion, they make it the day before. Don't tell me that wasn't coordinated. It was, So again, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not just that they failed in their obligations, but they were actively involved in actually really undermining their own purpose, their own reason for existence. Yeah, this is really, I don't think people, have fully recognized the scale of the enormity of their crime.
Right. All this again is on the backdrop of Israel committing a genocide in Gaza for almost the past 2 years now.
Right. We forget about that, but that's ongoing. I mean, there continue to be massacres of hungry people trying to get their food. I mean, hasn't stopped. And we're not even paying attention to it. I mean,
it's just any pretense that the United States and Israel are the good guys now. It's rapidly depleting. I don't think anybody believes this anymore. It's so crazy. I was always thinking, like, would Netanyahu ever would actually try to do this, because the PR war is against Israel so much. They can't. They're not going to be able to gain any sympathy when they do this, but they went ahead and did it anyways.
Yeah.
It's as if we haven't seen what's been going on for the past 2 years.
Yeah. Well, again, it's just like they're within their own bubble. Their bubble is the U.S. and their support, their supporters in the U.S. and Israel itself. And within that bubble, it's just like, okay, yeah, the whole world's against us, but that's how it is with the Jews. They're all anti-Semites, and to hell with them. We're going to do what we have to do. I think that's clearly the attitude.
Do you think we're fast approaching the point of no return for the United States?
I think we're on a policy course that is taking us over the cliff, so to speak. But again, it hasn't happened. I look out the window, I'm still being supplied with power. I can still go, okay, the prices are significantly higher, but I can still feed myself. That's what most people are thinking. It's still a prosperous country. But I mean, all these policies are hurting us, and the cumulative effect, both our foreign policy mistakes, and economic policy mistakes is going to hit hard at some point. I mean, it can't but, and I think we're again seeing the first signs of this. Yeah.
You're saying how Iran was going to withdraw from the NPT and go for a nuke. I was just thinking that's probably not a good idea, and I hope they don't do it, because if they do withdraw from the NPT, Israel and the US, they will pump that 24/7. See, we told you all along, Iran's trying to get a nuke, and now we got to nuke them. That's what's probably going to happen, is that cry's going to get very loud. But instead, what we're seeing, though, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I've been hearing reports that Pakistan is all in with Iran. And they're saying, okay, we got your back, Iran. They're calling on all Muslim countries to come to Iran's aid. And they said, okay, Israel, if you nuke Iran, we'll nuke you. And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got a nuclear power in here too. That changes the game completely. Iran, you don't have to go for the nuke, because we got them and we got your back. So if they try to mess with you, we'll bomb you. So Iran, stay in the NPT. It's all BS anyways. Just don't even worry about it. We got it. Don't give them any excuse to try to get the US involved.
Well, obviously, though, I guess the Iranian point of view is that, we tried to do that. We tried to, show that our good intentions, it didn't matter. And it's just like, they don't need an excuse. They're just going to do it. They already did it.
Right. But I know.
Yeah. So, but no, I understand what you're saying. You may be right. That's a difficult question, but I could see the other side of that too. And it's just like, it's what Pakistan said. That's hugely significant. I'm glad you brought that up, because there's so much news coming out that sometimes these really what should be earth-shaking news, we just hardly notice it, right? But that's very significant. Yeah, they're saying that we're going to, yeah, what you said, we've got Iran covered. If Israel goes nuclear, we go nuclear against Israel.
This is so scary because the US has just, all we do is we puff out our chests and say how we're number one. We've been doing that for so long. We are the hyperpower. And now we're being exposed in such a humiliating way, and we don't have anything else to back it up. We don't produce great things. We're not an economic power like we were before, and we don't have any moral power. Look, we've been supporting this genocide in Gaza. We don't have any support morally, and we keep on thumping our chests and saying how we're just so powerful, and we're going to be humiliated so incredibly here in Iran that I do think what I was saying before, we will just try to go nuclear sooner, or we push Israel to go nuclear, and we'll try to justify to maintain just blackmailing the whole world, saying that if you don't accept American US led primacy, US led world order, then we're going to just rage quit and blow up the whole world. We'll just rage quit the solar system. We're out. Like that's what we're doing. I feel like that's where it's going to go, the inevitable conclusion, because we don't have the power here. And then the question to pull us back from that brink is, can we have some kind of regime change within the United States or within Israel? If things start to get really bad, if people start talking about the Samson option and all this pressure, there's going to be unrest here. It's going to get crazy. And and the other thing maybe that could potentially de-escalate the situation, I'm just hoping, is that Israelis, they talk about how, I'm Yisrael Chai, we'll be here forever and we'll dance again. But the reality is one that I think their tolerance for pain is much lower than Iran's tolerance for pain, and definitely the Gazans and the Palestinians. So they will start to look at their second passport and they'll be like, maybe things weren't so bad back in New York. I'm going to fly back, and we're going to start to see an exodus. And that's what Israel's supposed to be, the Jewish state. Well, if the Jews all start to leave, then like that population of Jewish Israelis, that's the health bar. Once it gets too low, then okay, project failed, and then it can end. And so that's, I think, what we have to hope. And I think Netanyahu's aware of that, because I saw Ben Gurion Airport is shut down, and I've heard reports that they're not going to let people leave. I don't know if that's true.
I haven't heard that.
And somebody can leave in the comments if that's true or not. I see so much stuff on X, and I get fooled sometimes. But right now, I think Israelis are in a situation where they might be like, oh, we can't leave, and then they'll get upset with their government, and then maybe something internally within Israel can prevent this from going nuclear, because I feel like we're at the most dangerous point in the world ever. This makes the Cuban Missile Crisis look like child's play.
I wouldn't quite say that. I mean, we got very close to the brink, and even if this does go nuclear, it doesn't mean World War III. I mean, it could be a regional catastrophe. I think, but that's bad enough. It is, we are on the edge of the precipice here. Yes, I just wanted to comment on what you're saying about the, let's say, tolerance for pain and maybe the lack of resilience within Israel. Maybe we'll be proved wrong. Maybe they'll prove themselves to actually be very resilient. But we saw, like, within the during the let's say the Gaza, I don't want to call it a war. I won't dignify it with that name. The attack on Gaza following October 7th. Hezbollah supported the Gazans, and by firing rockets, generally very primitive rockets, into northern Israel. And so northern Israel was just completely emptied, of its residents. They fled, and it's just the contrast you see was so huge. There was so much more violence directed against southern Lebanon, even before the launch of the war against Lebanon. That began with the pager strikes and all that, but it turned into ground invasion there, and the very, very extensive bombings. Even before then, during the months leading up to it, when Hezbollah was firing rockets into northern Israel, Israel was bombing southern Lebanon quite heavily and did much, much more damage than Hezbollah did to northern Israel. But by and large, those um, residents of southern Lebanon, the people there, they stayed. They suffered a lot more. They stayed. These were their homes. These other people in northern Israel, it was really very minimal in contrast, but they fled. And my understanding is that a lot of them still haven't returned. And if that's indicative of Israeli society as a whole, then I think you're right. That's another thing to consider. It's just like really the willingness to wage a war. Maybe it's there, at least it probably is among certain sectors of Israeli society, but I think among a fairly large sector, it isn't there, and we've seen that already. And then again, another thing is the demographics. It's just that again, Iran is so much larger, both in terms of land area, but also population. I was just did sort of I just was thinking about doing kind of a you could say sort of a demonstration of this imbalance. And this is another thing that we have to take into account. Compare Tehran to Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has a population of 427,000. Tehran has a population of nearly 10 million. So let's call that, this is a huge difference. So it's approximately 20 to 1. Right. So let's say even if the Israelis are, let's say, doing twice as much damage to Iran as the Iranians are doing to Israel. Even if that continues to be, the outcome of these different missile strikes from both sides. Just compare. Let's just take Tel Aviv and take Tehran. Let's say if Israel just keeps on pounding Tehran, eventually they destroy 10% of Tehran, and they've got a 2-to-1 advantage in the amount of damage that they're doing. Now that may not even be true. Maybe it's 1-to-1 or something. Maybe it'll be less. But let's just say that they give the advantage to the Israelis. So they actually destroy 10% of Tehran. That would be a huge amount of damage. But let's see, Iran continues to strike back. They only do half as much damage to Tel Aviv. But at the end of that phase of the war, okay, 90% of Tehran is still standing. Tel Aviv is gone. And so again, this is another thing that we have to look at. I mean, I'm not predicting this is what's happening. I'm just doing sort of a thought experiment to show the demographic advantage that Iran has.
Do you think that Iran is trying to carefully manage escalation? Or are they at the point that they know that this war has begun and we have to keep the pressure on Israel?
Yeah, well, no, they're keeping the pressure on, but I think they are calibrating their responses. They're striking the kinds of targets that Israel has been striking within Iran. So, for example, recently the Israelis actually struck a gas field and I think an oil depot or a refinery within Iran. They hadn't done that before. But Iran responded by hitting I believe it was the oil refinery in Haifa, in spectacular fashion. And of course, Israel has gone after their scientific research centers in their scientists in particular in Iran. Iran responded by hitting a research center, I believe, in Tel Aviv, as the Weizmann Center, and did serious damage to that building. I think it's probably it's not reparable. I think that's it. And again, the actually military censorship in Israel is very strict. So I mean, we see these videos of the damage that's done, like in places like Tel Aviv, because there are too many people there with their cameras. We can't avoid seeing it, and they upload them, and that's just going to happen. It even happens in Ukraine now, in spite of the laws. Like, if you do this, you can be sent to prison for 5 years, or even worse, sent to the front. But still, people do it, and they're doing it in Israel. But that's within the population centers. So you see the footage from Haifa, for example, or Tel Aviv. But we've been hearing that the Iranians have also been hitting, other facilities like, military bases and so on and so forth. We don't see that. And we don't really know the extent of the damage. We did see a picture of that center, but the reports is that actually some a number of top scientists were killed, and very important laboratories were destroyed. That's just that's censored, but it's leaked out. People are talking about it in Israel. So anyway, that's
right. I think also wasn't the port in Haifa also has severely damaged or destroyed? Did you hear anything about that?
I don't know. I don't recall that happening, but there's so much news, so much information
Yeah,
flowing out that who knows?
right. I don't quote me on that. I'm not positive.
Yeah, I don't think so. I had heard that actually the Israelis struck the ports in southern Iran, but then I didn't hear anything more about it. So it sounds like if they did, they really didn't do any significant damage. But they did hit a gas field down there, which is it's actually I think this gas field extends. I believe it's Iraq encompasses territory in Iraq and Iran. It's the world's largest gas field, and they did strike the Iranian part of it. I don't know how much damage they did, but that kind of shook the world energy market right there. So again, we see ourselves on, we're teetering on the edge of a precipice right now.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
You're saying
again, I was just pointing out that I kind of forgot your initial question, but yeah, I think it's clear that the Iranians are calibrating, but in a real significant substantive way. It's not demonstrative. It's tit for tat. You're going to do this to us. We'll show that you can inflict pain on us. We can inflict pain on you. But they're careful not to go beyond that. It's they're not trying to escalate. They're responding, but responding, forcefully and in kind.
right. Yeah, it just seems like in this if we're moving into this attrition war, I think people will be shocked about how quickly the U.S. and Israel will run out of gas, run out of steam, and Iran will still be standing. Because Iran is being backed by China, Pakistan, Russia, these massive countries, massive populations, massive natural resource, massive production capacity,
Right.
much more than anything we have in the West. So just the idea that we can win this is insane. And so that's why I'm waiting for the nuclear blackmail. It's just going to happen. We're going to try. Stupidly enough, we're probably going to try to engage them conventionally. It's not going to work out the way that we expect it to work. And then what do? We'll look like the biggest laughing stock on the world stage. And Trump is not somebody that doesn't like to be made a laughing stock of. And he's going to say, okay, well, we'll show you we're number one. We got the largest nuclear or second largest nuclear arsenal in the world. We'll blow you to kingdom come.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, when you come to Trump, bets are all off. But yeah, that's not very encouraging. We just don't know. It is a possibility.
There's just so
I admit.
many. Yeah, I mean, already the signs of weakness are on the Western side are there. The fact that Israel, first of all, they had to do a sucker punch, but then you're saying that a lot of the attacks are done within Iran themselves. They've been doing car bombings, drone attacks. These are terrorist attacks. Terrorist attacks are what you do against a more powerful enemy because you cannot wage the war conventionally. So you engage in this type of asymmetric warfare. And so you engage in terrorist activity. And if Israel's already having to rely on that right in the beginning to be able to try to do any type of damage, it shows you they're the weaker party. They can't handle it.
Right. Well, I think everybody actually understood, and that's one reason why Israel has never done it before. But I think, like I said at the very beginning of this program here, because they came up with this plan similar to Operation Spiderweb. They were able to convince themselves and other people that they could pull it off. It was known that they didn't have the conventional means of achieving any a meaningful victory in Iran, but this gave people the hope, or people were able to be persuaded. I think because they did have this sucker punch, or this very devious or diabolical plan that they have to say was at least partially successful.